Hi, everyone. Let's get into the stories. I feel like spending some time in prison. I know this rant sounds weird, but I have to make it clear that I'm autistic, so I have a lot of crazy and strange hyperfocuses, and this is one of them. One thing I've always wanted to do is go to prison. Obviously, I'm not going to commit a crime, but I really wanted to have the chance to experience prison life for a while. I know that many bad things happen in prisons, like assaults, but aside from those parts, I really wanted to experience prison life. The schedule for being in your cell, the meal times, the time for sunbathing when people leave their cells to go to the yard, etc. This desire of mine started in childhood/adolescence when I borrowed a book from the school library and forgot to return it. A year later, I saw that the book was still at home and I started to panic, thinking that the police would arrest me for theft. At that time, I was doing some stupid things that could get me into trouble, so I started consuming various documentaries, videos, films, and other works about life in prison. But I ended up developing an interest and hyperfocus instead of fear, and I know that prisons in Brazil are horrible and overcrowded, so I'm referring to prisons in other countries where there are 2 or 4 people per cell at most, or a hypothetical prison where things actually work the way they should. Honestly, I wouldn't mind spending months or even years like that, as long as the prison was decent, not overcrowded, without spoiled food, etc. And sometimes I even get sick and suffer from stress because I can't have that experience. The most I can do to alleviate this somewhat is play prison-themed games. I really wanted to have the opportunity to experience prison life, like a special program where you sign up to spend a few weeks in prison. Of course, as I've already explained, I'm not referring to Brazilian prisons that are overcrowded and abandoned by God, only those of good quality. Okay, so here's my take. That's so specific, it's kind of fascinating. I don't think they actually want to be locked up. It sounds more like they want to experience the routine, the isolation, and the whole structure of prison life. But months or even years? Yeah, that's where you lost me. Now let's get into story number 2. The Man in the Mirror. Ever since I could remember, I've been intrigued with the paranormal. I don't know if it's because my dad and I would watch horror movies since I was little, or maybe it was something more. I don't remember when exactly I started seeing him, but it started at a very young age. For reference, in 25 now, my earliest memories of this was when I was around 7 or 8 years old. I had a smaller bedroom with my twin bed in one corner and a large vintage family heirloom mirror in the opposite corner facing my bed. My first memory of seeing the man, it was super late at night, my parents already went to bed and for some reason I could not fall asleep. It was a school night and I remember it was super windy out, I could hear the branches slamming against my window. I felt a sense of unease and remember sitting up in bed and I felt drawn to the mirror. He was there, in the mirror, looking like he was sitting on the corner of my bed. I remember being so freaked out because when I looked away from the mirror, there was no one other than me on my bed. He was a tall, slender man, dressed in a full suit. He would never say anything, but just stare, deep into my soul. I always felt scared seeing him, but also safe, if that makes sense. Every other night I would be woken up and would feel a pull towards the mirror. He would always be there watching me. This lasted months until one night, I personally don't remember this, but my mother swears by it to this day. My mom was woken up and heard talking coming from my room. She came to check on me, finding it weird that I was up so late, around 1 a.m., and found me sitting on the corner of my bed facing the mirror chatting to no one. She told me she was super freaked out at this. She asked who I was talking to and I told her the man in the mirror. She apparently brought me into her bed to sleep the rest of the night, and the next day my father removed the mirror from my bedroom. Months went by and my dad surprised me with a brand new bunk bed. This is when everything went south. I remember the first night in my new bed, I was so excited. I finally felt like a big kid and had so much extra space in my room. I still wasn't able to sleep well and I started getting weird nightmares. It was always the same dream of the tall man in the suit coming into my room. He would just stand there and stare at me. He never touched me, he just watched. I felt scared, but again protected. That was until he stopped coming around. It felt like something was missing from me. I started to miss his visits. I started to feel attached to him. I felt like I was not safe anymore from the dangers that lurked ahead. I remember this night clearly. It's burned in my memory. I was laying on the top bunk, ready to fall asleep, but I couldn't. I felt like someone was watching me. I looked down from my bed towards my bedroom door and could see two eyes staring at me. I knew this wasn't the tall man. The eyes were different, demonic, if you will. I got so scared I ripped the covers over my head because if I can't see them, they can't see me, right? That was when I heard creaking. Someone or something was on my ladder, slowly coming up to my bed. I was shaking in fear. I wished for the tall man to come save me from whatever was about to happen. I felt frozen. I couldn't move. I could barely breathe. It was like something was sitting on me. The next thing I know, I felt a claw, not a hand, but a claw clamp down onto my ankle. I screamed as loud as I could, bloody murder type of scream. I removed the covers from my head, ready to fight off whatever this was, and I saw it. It didn't look human. I can't even explain what it could have been. Its eyes were unlike anything I've seen. It had huge talon-like claws and it was moving towards me. I felt every move it made. It was climbing onto me. The next thing I know, I blink and it's gone, right when my dad barged into my room, worried as hell. He flicked on the lights and came up the ladder to see what was going on. I couldn't say anything, I just bursted out in tears. He brought me into his room and I slept in my parents' bed that night again. The next morning, my mom and dad sat me down and asked what I saw that night. They thought it was just a nightmare, but when I told them my ankle was hurting, they looked and found red marks, claw-like marks, on my ankle. This freaked them out, and my mom truly thought I was being stalked by a demon. After that night, it stopped again for a bit. My dreams of the tall man came back and I felt safe again, like I could sleep again. I mentioned it to my mom randomly one day and this piqued her curiosity. She started asking what he looked like, what he did, and I told her, he just watched me. She started pulling out old family photo albums and we were just looking through them when I stopped on one page. It was him, the tall man. I would never forget his face. Turns out that was my great-great-grandfather. He passed before my mother was even born. This startled her to her core, and she called my grandmother, her mom, right away. My grandmother was a spiritual lady and believed that he was here to protect me from something, to just let him be. A few years go by, I'm around 10 to 11-ish years old, and he would come around periodically, but not as often as before. I was a very outgoing kid growing up and would always make new friends wherever I could. I had this imaginary friend. He would come around when I was feeling a bit down/sad and would always cheer me up. He was around my age, shorter, brown hair and beautiful blue eyes. I remember his eyes, they were like crystal blue. He never spoke, I never knew his name, but he started to come around more and more. This was when my depression hit. I got diagnosed at age 11 and was starting therapy. I remember crying all the time, feeling so low and helpless. He would help me, make me laugh, make me feel seen. I don't know what happened, but one day he became mean. He wouldn't try and cheer me up anymore. It was like he was trying to suck my energy from me. The last memory I have of him was Thanksgiving of 2012. We were all at my grandmother's house like we do every year. Our family was very large and would always get together on holidays. I remember feeling so helpless and alone. The little boy was following every move I made, and my parents brushed it off as being an imaginary friend. I knew he was real, though. We were all standing in the kitchen, my grandfather standing beside me. My mother and grandmother were across from us, chatting up a storm. I kept complaining about the boy trying to pull me away, seclude me. My family started to think I was going a bit crazy, talking to myself and such. I kept trying to tell the boy to leave me alone, and the next thing I know, my leg is being yanked in the air. My grandfather saw this whole thing happen and grabbed me, trying to pull me away from whatever force was taking me. He still gets shook up about this ordeal, swearing that he felt like something was physically pulling me toward the hallway. He said my leg was a full 90 degrees in the air, and it took him a good pull to get my leg back down to the ground. After that night, my mother and grandmother brought me to the church. The priest blessed me, came to our home, blessed our whole house, and said many prayers over my head to rid the spirits from me. Since then, nothing else has happened, and I truly believe that the tall man, my great-great-grandfather, was trying to protect me from some evil spirit that was attached to me. I still get super creeped out every time I think about what happened, and I don't think I'll ever fully understand why. All right, story number 3, odd energy in bedroom. Hey guys, so I'm not super sure if this would be the right place to post this, but I need help and this subreddit felt appropriate. Please, if you guys have any recommendations on other subs I can post to, that would be great. I live in a home that was built early 1900s. My grandma bought it straight off the market and nobody else has lived there except my mother and I. My grandma is still alive, but she is now living in a residential home. Our town is built on Native American grounds. Although my grandma did collect interesting things to my knowledge, she kept and made lots of ceramic dolls, but they were eventually thrown out. She was a big hoarder before we had moved in, but the house has been cleaned out since then. Now, her room, which is the master bedroom, remains vacant and is used as a storage room with her old furniture in it, along with other things. Prior to it being a storage room, my mom's best friend stayed in that room. She was agnostic like I was, and she was the only other person to mention how she felt an energy. I had been telling my mom that there was an energy, but of course, she didn't believe me. I know that my mom's friend saged that room, but it didn't help. Now she's moved out, and my sister stays in the room next to it, while mine is diagonal to the master bedroom. We rarely go into that bedroom, but my sister feels it too. It's an overwhelming presence of something being inside of that room. It does not leave the room, but you can feel that whatever it is doesn't like when you're in the room for too long, and eventually decided to usher you out if you overdo your stay. My boyfriend, who is also spiritual, also feels it. All three of us have caught on to this feeling, and we're now realizing how serious it is. I am agnostic, but I felt as I was able to live among whatever this was, because to me it never felt entirely that evil, as it just preferred to be left alone. It just simply doesn't feel welcoming. In my body and soul, along with my sister and boyfriend, we all agree it's not the bedroom, but there's something in the room, like an object that carries this problem. We have been considering going through the room to find this item because we all agree that normally when you find an item of that sort, you feel the energy and you can just tell. My concern is that although whatever this thing is, it doesn't mind us being around, but it's not welcoming of us in its space. The last thing I want to do is upset it. What is it that my sister and I can do to make sure that whatever it is feels comfortable and understands that we aren't a threat and simply want what's best for all of us in this scenario? Along with hoping to receive advice about what we should do to cleanse this room. I apologize for the long post. I really hope this makes sense. Thank you all. Okay, this one is more unsettling than scary to me. The fact that several people felt the same thing in that room is what gets me. And if they really think it's attached to an object, I don't know if I'd be brave enough to go looking for it. Let's see what story number 4 has for us. Just sharing this story way back college, sleep paralysis, or maybe some of you have experienced something similar? There was a time, more than 10 plus years ago, when I was alone in my condo. I woke up and couldn't move. Only my eyes could move. Apparently, I always left the light on in my room even when I was sleeping. I suddenly woke up and I really couldn't move or even speak. Just my eyes could move. My body felt this overwhelming fear, and I felt like there was some kind of evil presence or whatever you want to call it around me while I was lying there. So I closed my eyes and silently prayed the Apostles' Creed. While I was praying, I heard a voice similar to Smeagol's voice from The Lord of the Rings, repeating the Apostles' Creed along with me. The voice was terrifying, and it was even laughing, mocking me while also saying the prayer with me. I ignored it despite being scared and finished my prayer. After that, my body suddenly became normal again. I immediately got up and went to the living room, and when I looked at the clock, it was already 3 a.m. I prayed the Apostles' Creed because a friend had told me before that it was something you could pray when you felt there was a bad spirit around. I was so scared that I didn't want to go back to my bedroom to sleep. I ordered McDonald's and watched TV just so there would be some noise. I ordered McDonald's because I thought I might as well eat since I'm alone. I couldn't exactly text my friend who lived on the 3rd floor to come stay with me because she was definitely already asleep. I only had about 3 months left until graduation, but I never went back to my bedroom to sleep again. I slept on the couch in the living room until I graduated. People said that condo was actually haunted. I don't know. They said it was sleep paralysis, but I highly doubt it because I genuinely felt something and heard the voice. I was awake, and then suddenly I could move again. I even got up to check the time and ordered food online. My parents actually got mad at me when I told them about it. They said maybe I wasn't praying enough, but I literally passed by a church every day after class. Those days were actually a really sad time for me because I wasn't happy at school, so I don't know if that also had something to do with why I felt like these things were able to approach me. My dad bought me a prayer book and a rosary, so I kept them beside me whenever I slept. He also told me to leave the radio, TV, or computer on, anything with people talking or some kind of sound, because apparently these things don't like noisy environments. My dad is actually another person in our family who has experienced things like this since he was young. He would sometimes sense things and even see them. For me, I sometimes hear things or feel their presence to the point that I physically start feeling unwell. I never experienced anything like that again until I eventually left that place for good. People in the area also said that, apparently, the owner's child had died by suicide on that property before they built the condo there. That's what the people who lived around the area told us anyway. I really hate experiencing things like this because they make me feel physically unwell. The most recent one was when my siblings and I went to an antique gallery. It was pretty scary too. I honestly don't know why I experience things like this. I'm not even into horror stories or paranormal stuff, and I'm not a bad person either. I'm an introvert, and I actually prefer being alone most of the time, even though I do have friends. Well, sleep paralysis explains a lot here, but that voice repeating the prayer and mocking them at the same time? Nope. I completely understand why they never slept in the room again.
5th story. The love didn't stop after death. This happened in 2009. I have been close to my grandma since I was a baby. We did so many adventures together. She was a strong woman and didn't play about her family. She was a firecracker. I love her so much. Well, my family and I moved away because of my dad's job. We always came back to visit her. We would surprise her without calling her. She would be so happy. We would talk to her the phone every day. Well, 2009, we went to surprise her for her birthday. We got to her house and the door was open, and dog food all over the porch. We knew something was wrong because she fed her dog cooked food. She didn't come to the door when my mom blew the horn. She was sitting in her chair and barely could move. She didn't tell us that she was sick all along. Her legs were black like cast iron. We stayed for a couple of days but was coming back again the next week. On Tuesday, I had to work. I was feeling great, but all of a sudden I started sweating and weak. I had to pee and move bowel at the same time. I asked my boss the time because I felt like I needed to leave early. He said 4:30 p.m., remember this time, so I decided to stay and threw water on my face. The next morning on Wednesday, I felt better and was running errands. I got back home and my parents were sitting outside waiting for me. They sat me down and told me that our family in Georgia found my grandma dead in her house. I couldn't control my emotions. We went down to get ready for the funeral. My uncle came down too, which is my mom's brother. They helped clean out their mother home. We went to one of the family house to discuss about planning the funeral. We was sitting around laughing and sharing stories about my grandma. My uncle was like, on Tuesday I felt horrible around, but before he could get it out, I looked at him and said around 4:30 p.m. He was like, how did you know that? I told him the same thing happened to me. Well, the day of the funeral was one of the worst day of my life. We got in the family car behind the hearse headed to the cemetery. Me and my uncle got sick at the same time. We was sweating and had to come out some of our clothes. When the preacher said ashes to ashes and dust to dust over her coffin, I started feeling better. It was like she was letting us go on the way to the cemetery. I had never experienced anything like that in my life. My mom felt left out because she didn't connect with her. She probably knew my mom was going to be strong. This one feels more sad than scary to me. Both of them getting sick at the exact same time is such a strange coincidence. And honestly, I kind of like the idea that maybe she was just saying goodbye.